everyone, how's it going? As you can see, I'm finally able to wear my birthday t-shirt from my wife, the Ramones, my cool Ramones t-shirt she got me with the long sleeves for the first time in a long time. Japanese summer and humid weather has finally vanished and we're down to some cool under 60-degree temps. It's 59 today and a little drizzly, a little rainy. Perfect for hanging out, talking about books, and finally getting to wear a long sleeve shirt. So what I thought I'd do today, it's a little late. My buddy Paul over at Geeks Love Dogs, great channel over there, did a tag, his own original tag, the dog tags tag. Another booktuber friend of mine, David at Garage Geek, did a follow-up, the Canine tag, he called it. I believe Kevin Towle has done this tag, Paul's tag, and Steve Donogue has as well. We're all dog lovers here, I guess. I don't own a dog now here in Japan. We're not really allowed to have pets in my house at the moment, but I love dogs. I like cats too, but I love dogs. And I thought, well, as Paul asked me to do this tag, he tagged me in his very first canine tag, and I thought I would try to respond, even though I struggled quite a bit with a couple of these prompts, as you'll see as we come to them. Okay, so let's get started. First prompt is the K1. He called these K1 through K9. Very cute. Is a very clever tag. I don't usually do tags. One reason is I struggle with some of the questions, right? I don't always think about books this way. So I'm going to do my best. Sorry, Paul, if this one doesn't come out great. The first one's called The Playful Pup, K1, a lighthearted book. And what, I don't have the individual book of this today, but I do have the 3-volume set. And I'm going to recommend anything by Gerald Durrell, but this is the Corfu trilogy by Gerald Durrell. I've talked about Gerald Durrell's Drunken Forest other times on this channel, plus some of his other work. But I'm going to recommend the first of his memoirs about growing up on the island of Corfu. That's the Corfu trilogy. My Family and Other Animals. Cute title. Very enjoyable and beautifully written book. Now, he wrote 2 sequels. And this one has all 3 of these. This has My Family and Other Animals, Birds, Beasts, and Relatives in the Garden of the Gods. And this is all about Gerald Durrell's growing up before World War II as a young boy. Probably, I think he was about 10 or 11 when they first moved there. Book starts off with his mother. His father, I guess, has passed away, and he's got an older brother, Lawrence Durrell, who's also a famous novelist in his own right, mainstream novelist. His middle brother and his sister, and of course, Jerry. He goes by Jerry, of course, to everyone else in this book, his family. The animals of the title, I guess. And they're all sitting around moping in the rainy, cold, dreary British weather. And someone says, let's go, I think it's Lawrence, says, let's go somewhere warm for a change and escape this dreary London atmosphere. And so they decide to go to Corfu, which is an island near Greece. And what happens after that? And Jerry remembers this as a wonderful time of his youth. They meet many interesting local people, including a couple who become very close friends. And Durrell, thinking back, I think he wrote this book in his 20s or maybe even 30s, looking back with a kind but, fairly straightforward eye at his family's foibles and misadventures. He details in loving strokes of beautiful poetic language and also lots of examinations of the local fauna and flora of the island and the weather and the people. These years, these very precious years, obviously they were to him precious years of his formative youth growing up in his preteen and teen years in Corfu. And of course, he's a budding naturalist, so there's lots of mishaps and adventures with him getting animals and bringing them back, which sometimes startles Lawrence Durrell's upper crust friends who come to visit, and Jerry's long-suffering mother. Now, these books, especially this first one, has been printed many times. quite famous, probably the most famous of Durrell's works, and has been adapted several times for British television. There was an adaptation in the 70s, I believe, a TV series. There was another one, TV movie, I think, in the maybe early 2000s. And then there was another fairly recent ITV series called The Durrells, focusing more on the mother, with Jerry more of a side character, which is the complete opposite of the books. But it was an interesting direction to take the series, and that was also filmed on location. So it was a very beautiful and attractive TV series. So that's my long-winded recommendation for a light-hearted book. But anything you pick up by Gerald Durrell, for the most part, any of his travelogues and animal collecting books, guaranteed to tickle your funny bone. Very amusing. He's a wonderful writer, and I highly recommend him. Okay, K2, The Pill in the Peanut Butter, a book that you thought you'd love but didn't. Now, this is one of the prompts I struggled with, because usually if I'm not liking a book, I tend not to finish it. So I don't have many books that I've read to the finish that I really wasn't enjoying. Perhaps that says something about me. I should have better stick-to-itiveness for some books, but sometimes most of the time, I'm pretty good at picking what I think I'm going to like. And if I end up not liking it, it's probably more of a not right now. Maybe I definitely think I'll like it at some stage, and I'll put it aside for later when it hits me in the right mood. But if it's really turning me off, I'll just not finish it and not come back to it. So the only couple things I can kind of think about in recent or last decade or so memory that would fit this category is the Longmire series of books by Craig Johnson. I know these are highly regarded. I quite liked the TV series version of Longmire, starring Robert Taylor. No, not the classic Robert Taylor, the Australian Robert Taylor, as Sheriff Walt Longmire, and I believe he is set in Wyoming. It was fun series, a little over melodramatic in a few cases, and Longmire, kind of a savior complex, a little too much. But I like this show quite a bit. I tried the novels after the fact. I believe it's A Cold Dish, Craig Johnson's first Longmire novel. I just didn't get on with them. I didn't like them. They were well written, for sure, and I know they got a lot of fans, enough to have spurred on the making of the TV series, but I just didn't take to it. Now, another series, which I quite like in general, I don't read a lot of modern thrillers, I guess, but I do like the occasional one. And I'm quite fond of John Sandford's Virgil Flowers series. John Sandford has another series, the Prey series, about another detective. And Virgil Flowers kind of grew out of that, and he got his own series. And I think there's at least 12, 14 books in that series as of this moment, as far as I'm aware. I've read several of them, and I've enjoyed them quite a bit, but one of them I just didn't like, and that I try to remember which one it was. I'm pretty sure it was the novel Stormfront, which was, I think, the 8th book in the series. Just didn't get on with that one at all. It just seemed to go nowhere, which is very unusual for a Sandford novel and for a Virgil Flowers book. So that's my best try at that particular prompt. K3, question 3, prompt 3 is Puppy Dog Eyes. Again, Paul being really cutesy with his name of his prompts here. A book that pulled on your heartstrings. This is another one I struggled with. Now, I becoming increasingly sentimental the older I get, and when I watch TV or movies, I frequently gets a little dusty in the room. I get a little, emotional sometimes. But I almost never do with books, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just more visceral, emotional when I'm watching a film or a TV show. But and I do love books. I do get involved with books. Of course, I wouldn't have a BookTube channel if I didn't love books. But I don't really. I guess it's more of an intellectual thing more than an emotional thing generally for me in most books. I mean, I can get deep in the suspense of something going on for sure, where I've stayed up almost all night reading a book because I just couldn't put it down. But as far as pulling at my heartstrings, if I go in the most recent thing that I can think of was from earlier this year. It wasn't, the reason why I can think of this one is because it wasn't 100% a reading thing. It was listening to the audiobook of the Andy Weir novel Project Hail Mary. And I didn't look up who the narrator was of that. Dang it. I'll put it up on the screen. But he did a bang-up job narrating this novel, which is a really fun science fiction novel about the kind of a extinction level event happening with some kind of weird alien microbes that are eating the sun, basically, I think, or I forgot the exact situation that's going on, but they're going to cause the extinction of Earth and all life if this kind of Hail Mary project doesn't succeed in its mission. And it starts off in a wonderful fashion where the narrator of the story is awoken from cryogenic sleep when he reaches the ship's destination, and he's one of 3 astronauts on this mission, and he quickly finds out he's the only one who survived the trip. And then he finds out there's another ship from another galaxy, not of Earth, that is also there, and maybe their mission is the same. And what happens after that? It's a fantastic book, and it's written really well and really engaging voice, and the narrator of the audiobook does a great job. Now, again, it's not something that made me tear up or anything, but there is an interesting revelation about the central character that kind of colors what came before it. I'll just put it that way. And then at the end, that same character, or towards the end of the book, that same character makes a decision, a key decision, putting his life on the line for someone else, which was quite moving, actually. And when I got to the end of the book, I was moved. So that was a fantastic book. That's easily one of, if not the best read I've had all year. Although, again, I still struggle with calling audiobooks reading 100%. That's just kind of I don't, not to downplay what anyone else thinks. I know a lot of people get through a lot of books that way. I think audiobooks are great. I love this one. It's the only audiobook I've done this year, but I really enjoyed it. So I have no problem with people doing this or counting them as books that they've read. Of course, I've counted this book as one of the books I've read this year, so that's no problem there. But I don't think it's quite the same as reading, but I think because of this component of someone performing, basically the narrator performing the parts in the book, and just really enhanced the drama and kind of poignancy of parts of this book. So I really love that one. That's my choice for the book that pulled on your heartstrings. Prompt K4, Loyal Companion. This is another interesting one. A book character who would be a good companion, or someone you'd like to hang out with, or someone that would complement your character, I believe is how Paul put it. Now, there's a whole bunch of sidekick characters, I guess, or companion characters in books. There's Samwise Gamgee from The Lord of the Rings. Whether I'd want to have an ale with Sam, I certainly would. He's a great character, but I don't know if he'd be necessarily tailor-made for me as a companion, but he's certainly a good one. I also thought of Dr. John Watson, Sherlock Holmes' companion, who is down for whatever crazy, dangerous case that Sherlock Holmes asks him to assist him with. I also thought of kind of an odd one from one of the Lynn Carter Xanthanons, the Lynn Carter Xanthanon series, which is his kind of Pellucidar E.R.B. Burroughs knockoff books or series of 5 novels. He introduces a character there called Hurok. In fact, Hurok gets his own kind of starring title, Hurok of the Stone Age. Hurok is a Neanderthal that our hero Eric Carstairs, kind of two-fisted adventurer hero, encounters in this underground world in Xanthanon, and the two become fast friends, and Hurok proves to be a really good companion. I think that'd be interesting, have a big, bruising, tough brute of a Cro-Magnon who actually has a little bit of a sensitive soul, open to friendship with a more Cro-Magnon sort of man, like Eric Carstairs. But actually, the one that kind of sticks out of my memory, again, kind of a frivolous series of books, the Clive Cussler, Dirk Pitt novels. Now, I haven't read a Dirk Pitt novel in a long time. I kind of grew out of them, I guess, or I grew tired of them, I suppose. But there was a phase probably 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, where I read a bunch of them, and I really enjoyed them. They had some ridiculously imaginative and fun action sequences. And Dirk Pitt, kind of a underwater salvage expert with a little bit of James Bond and a little bit of Doc Savage thrown in there. Really fun series of adventure novels. They made a movie with Matthew McConaughey as Pitt, who is not who I really picture as Pitt, but the movie was called Sahara, which is a really fun book as well. And Dirk Pitt's buddy throughout that series is a guy called Al Giordano, kind of average size, stocky, tough, phlegmatic, pragmatic buddy who's always there, right-hand man to Dirk, and several times saves his bacon or is instrumental in saving the day. He's not just a sidekick. He's a very important piece of that duo, that double threat there. And Dirk Pitt always, and the writer Clive Cussler, always gives him his due as being a very capable, tough, and practical sort of companion, and also cracking some jokes here and there. So I think my choice would be Al Giordano. I can't think of anything else at the moment. Again, I'm struggling with these a little bit. Sorry, Paul. Okay, what do we got? Number 5. This one this was the toughest question because, and I'll explain. This is the Chasing Your Tail. This is K5, Chasing Your Tail, a book you inexplicably keep returning to. Now, I'm going to remove the word inexplicably from this because I just, most of my reading is never inexplicable to me. I know what Paul was going after with this question, but I don't tend to go back to books that I don't understand why I'm going back to them, I guess. They're exerting a certain pull on me or whatever. So I'm going to take the inexplicable out of it. So I'm going to say that books that I choose deliberately to go back to many times, and most of those are reference books, movie reference books, or TV show reference books specifically. So, for example, I love ITC series. I have a video coming up on a magazine about them. If you're not sure what ITC is, it's about, they released shows like The Prisoner, Space 1999, UFO, The Saint, Randall Hopkirk Deceased, The Muppet Show, etc. I've read this book cover to cover at least 5 or 6 times. This is the Golden Age of ITC, Cult TV, The Golden Age of ITC by Robert Sellers. Joe Bob goes to the drive-in and Joe Bob goes back to the drive-in. Every few years I'll pull this off the shelf and read it for a good laugh. They're kind of movie reviews from the early 80s. Now, Joe Bob Briggs is the kind of trailer trash Texas identity of a writer called John Bloom, who was a journalist before he adapted this kind of good old boy persona of Joe Bob Briggs. And of course, Joe Bob Briggs went on to be on TV, kind of a movie host. He focused on all sorts of B and, like I said, C, D, E, F, and G, and Z rated movies. He was extremely funny. He wrote for the Dallas Times Herald, which I think he called the Dallas Slimes Herald. And he was always fighting with the editorial board with what he was trying to get away with in his column. He's very funny. He would rate movies on the scale of 3 Bs, which was blood, beasts, and blood, breasts, and beasts or something. And his reviews are really funny. And he also usually does like a little weird story of his trailer trash life. He always talks about, going to see the drive-in. That's why the drive-in, he would always, Joe Bob Briggs anyway. I don't know about John Bloom, his real life counterpart. But he would always prefer going to see things in the wide open air as God intended, as he put it. And he would watch all sorts of movies. So the ones he's reviewing here are ones that were coming out in this time period. So, for example, he reviews Tomboy and Rambo. I'm guessing that's Rambo 2, and Fraternity Vacation, and Pumping Iron 2, The Women, and Life Force, and Fright Night and Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome, and all those. So many movies that are less well known than that, but connoisseurs of VHS and old cheesy horror movies from the 80s probably remember Joe Bob Briggs. And anyway, very fun. I go back to those pretty often when I'm feeling in a mood for some humorous stuff. Anyway, I have a lot of books that I do return to. I know why. There's nothing that I'm inexplicably drawn back to that I can think of. So that's another one where I'm kind of failing on this task. Case 6, which is Go Walkies. Did I tell you Paul was clever with his prompt names here? So this is a fictional world where you'd want to walk a dog through. Now, I'm kind of with Steve Donogue on this one, where the real world far outstrips most fictional worlds as far as where I'd like to spend some time. But I think if I'm going to embrace this topic, I will choose Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom, which is his version of Mars, where John Carter goes and bounces being from Earth and going to Mars with lighter gravity. He has extra strength and speed and can bound, 50 feet in the air or 25 feet in the air and fly around. I think that'd be pretty fun to do with your dog. Now, John Carter does have a pretty cool dog-like monster companion, at least in the first novel. I'm trying to remember if Woola, his name is Woola, kind of like a six-legged little slobbery beast that is loyal to a fault. Has a heart the size of, Jupiter. Anyway, he's wonderfully realized, by the way, in the somewhat overlooked movie version starring Taylor Kitsch from a few years back. That's a really well done take on Woola. He's done very well on that. Anyway, I can imagine that'd be fun, bounding around with your pet dog in the lower gravity of Barsoom. Okay. K7, prompt 7 is he's got fleas. So an irritating character that, a character that in books that irritates you to no end, like you have fleas. Now, this is one where DNFing comes in all the time, because I can't really give a straight answer on this, because if I'm reading a book and one of the main characters, especially the main character or narrator, is too irritating, I will DNF that sucker faster than you can say Rumpelstiltskin. I am not a fan of something that's irritating me too much. I get enough of that in life. I don't really want it in my fiction or my TV shows or whatever. That's one of the reasons why, as funny as it could be, I was never really a fan of Seinfeld. All of those main characters are scumbags. I don't really want to spend time with them. So, again, I don't really have an answer for this one. Someone is too irritating in the book, and they're taking up the large share of the book. I'm done with them. So I'll DNF the book. K8, prompt 8, best in show, best fictional dog. This one's tough because there's a lot of them. The one that I'm going to focus on, because there's just too many, I'll just never be able to choose one if I think about all of the possible good answers for this. So I'm going to choose a fairly recent series, which since I read it, I've only read the first couple novels in it. It's a mystery series, the Chet and Bernie series of mysteries by Spencer Quinn. I think it's up to like book 15 now or something ridiculous like that. But the first book is called Dog on It. And what's really fun, cute, and clever about this series, especially the first couple books that I've read, I haven't read the rest, I'm assuming they're still fun and clever, is that the book is told from the dog's point of view. Chet is the loyal, I believe he's a German Shepherd. And Quinn really captures what you would expect a dog's voice might be like. So Chet is the pooch that belongs to a private detective named Bernie. I forgot his family name at the moment, and I think I gave away my copies of the first two novels. But Bernie is a typical kind of bachelor guy that is a dedicated PI, gets involved usually not in murder cases, but in kidnapping or missing persons or other kinds of cases. And Chet is his loyal companion who is narrating only a dog could, focusing on the food and what food is available and his love for Bernie, who he calls Bernie in his mind. And there's some surprising amount besides of humor and fun and cuteness, I guess, with the dog. And there's there's like a real subgenre of cutesy pie, cat books and doggy books and pet detective books and, things like that. Some of them I like okay, most of them I steer far clear from. But this one has a bit of a hard edge. There's some scenes where there's real danger. Chet sometimes gets abandoned by some bad guys while Bernie is kidnapped, and Chet's abandoned way out in the desert somewhere, and he has to make his way back and try to track down where Bernie is and save him and all that. So I recommend this series. It's a lot of fun. Okay, and last is to tag others. Canine is to tag others. Pick your pack, I believe it's called. And I'm never good at tagging people. I don't like to bother them. So I'll just say, if anyone else would like to do this tag and hasn't already, please do so. Again, please check out Paul's original tag video where he created this one. I think, kudos to him for coming up with a really fun and original series of prompts. Even though I struggled with some of them, other people did a much better job with it or interpreted them in their own way. So I'll have Paul's video linked down below. I'll have David at Garage Geeks video linked down below. I think Kevin Towle just did one. I'll link that one. And of course, Steve Donogue did one. And I don't know of anyone else who has yet. Feel free to do so if you would like. And again, I don't do tags too often, but sometimes it's a fun thing to do. Hope you might enjoy this one as I rambled on and tried to come up with some answers for these prompts, which were not 100% easy for me for whatever reason. So thanks a bunch. Hope you're doing well, enjoying what you're reading. October is almost over. I can't believe it. So hopefully you're getting some cool, spooky, creepy, ghostly reading in, or some occult detective reading in, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks.